Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Ethiopia allows unimpeded humanitarian access to the UN to try to help civilians caught in the middle of weeks of conflict between the government and Tigray fighters. I speak to the Ethiopian ambassador about the human cost of the war. Also, as countries around the world line up their plans to vaccinate populations against COVID-19, there's concern that lower-income African countries may struggle. Many lack funds and infrastructure essential to rolling out large-scale immunization campaigns. And after decades of civil war, Central African Republic's film industry is understandably small, but many still have a huge desire to tell visual stories. But first, after 3 weeks of conflict that sent over 40,000 refugees over the border into Sudan, Ethiopia's agreed to let the UN deliver aid to civilian populations still in the northern region of Tigray. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed launched a military operation there in early November, accusing its TPLF leaders of having attacked a military base. Aid agencies have been warning for weeks that the violence has sparked a humanitarian crisis. Abiy says that the war has been won after Tigray's capital of Mekelle was seized over the weekend. Earlier, I spoke to the Ethiopian ambassador to Paris, Henok Tefera. I asked him about why humanitarian access had not been made a priority by Ethiopia earlier on in the conflict.
Humanitarian access is a priority because these are, first and foremost, our citizens. As you know, it was on November 4th that the TPLF junta provoked this crisis by assassinating in cold blood our military officers and servicemen. They have publicly said so. They have explained the rationale. They have explained why they did it. And I don't understand why the international media doesn't report it, as it is not a claim. It has been confirmed. They explained to us in the local TV why they attacked on November 4th and committed cold-blooded murder.
But the question at the moment is not...
secure the areas.
Sorry, excuse me, Ambassador. The question is not why the war began. The question is why it has taken this long for access to be given to those who are caught up in the middle of this conflict between the government and the leaders of Tigray.
No, it's very important to understand the genesis because this was provoked and imposed by the TPLF junta. Having said that, humanitarian access has been granted once areas that have been liberated are secure. We want humanitarian workers to work in the best of conditions and to deliver humanitarian assistance, whether food or medicine. And as you said, we signed an agreement on November 30th with the UN so that they can have unfettered access. Now, unfettered access has been given. They can deliver food and medicine to the population.
And were there any considerations on the side of the Ethiopian government to try and make some provisions for the civilian communities that would inevitably be caught up in this whilst the conflict was ongoing?
Well, as you know, again, the genesis of the conflict, as you said, is very important to understand. Our troops were attacked while in their sleep. We were not in a position to anticipate anything. Therefore, in a situation where we were being killed, our troops were being killed, it was important first to gather our forces, make sure that we undertake a rule of law operation that will bring the culprits to justice, and at the same time making sure that we avoid, to the extent possible, loss of civilian life. As you may know, no city has been destroyed. All the cities in Tigray are intact because purposely the military carried out its operation in a very meticulous manner.
Now, when Mekelle was taken, your government, as you have just done, was very clear about, celebrating the fact that you're saying that no civilians were harmed in it. However, the TPLF is saying the opposite. Now, bearing in mind how difficult it is to get information out of the region, what do you put that discrepancy down to? What do you put that discrepancy down to? Why is the TPLF saying that civilians were hurt in all of this?
Listen, the TPLF forces have been completely routed. Now their only hope is to create a war in the media. They're basically not there on the ground. We control the whole Tigray. The cities are under our control. The population now has started going back to their normal lives. So they have to create this buzz in order to give you, the international community, the impression that there's something happening. This operation has been successfully completed. We are now in the second phase where we're working for the rehabilitation of the people of Tigray. And this will be made very clear. You know, you can lie sometimes to some people, but you cannot lie to all the people all the time. So the truth will come out, and eventually this will wither away. Therefore, I really don't give much attention to the pretenses of the TPLF routed forces who are in hiding, and we know where they are. And they will be dealt with and be brought to the court of law.
And so what happens
to
now?
Answer for their crime.
What happens next?
Well, it's already happening. As I said, humanitarian access is being delivered by us. The UN will come in. Local administrations are being set up together with the communities involved. You have elders, civil society organizations, different parties working in Tigray, coming together and ensuring that there is civil peace and that the normal activity goes on. What happens next is that Tigray is liberated from the tentacles of the TPLF junta. Tigray will be able to benefit from the democratization process in our country, and life goes on. And the TPLF junta, which perpetrated this crime, will be brought to in front of the court of law and will answer for their crimes.
Ambassador Henok Tavera there, the Ethiopian envoy to France, speaking to me a little earlier on. In other news, Ugandan presidential hopeful Bobi Wine has said that he will resume his campaign. He suspended his preparations for elections in January after his supporters were injured in a violent police crackdown on Tuesday. A day later, Wine said that he met with the Electoral Commission to urge them to do more to stop police brutality. Wine is hoping to unseat longtime leader Yoweri Museveni in next year's polls and has been repeatedly arrested since making his presidential bid. 54 people were killed in protests last month. There are fears that unrest is escalating ahead of the vote. And UN experts are warning that South Sudan's latest peace effort is not going smoothly. The coalition government formed in February has stalled, and former rebel leader and current vice president Riek Machar is reportedly being locked out of the decision-making process. Kiir's team claims that Riek Machar's team, claims that he's been under de facto house arrest and is being sidelined by President Salva Kiir. The country slid into war in 2013, with the latest hard-fought peace agreement having been struck in 2018. UN monitors also say that forces of both Kiir and Machar have violated the ceasefire. And as countries around the world line up their plans to vaccinate populations against COVID-19, there's been concern that lower-income countries, many of which are in Africa, may have trouble with access, funding, and execution. Part of the problem is a lack of infrastructure to store vaccines for long enough and safely. Malawi is one of those countries facing challenges on this front. Nicolas Chemin has the details.
At the Bwayira hospital in Malawi's capital, vaccines are stored in this kind of refrigerator. The problem is that the COVID-19 vaccines that have been most successful in medical trials need much colder temperatures. The World Health Organization is concerned.
The two vaccines that have now come up with the efficacies of over 90%, they require ultra cold chain, from minus 20 degrees centigrade to minus 80 degrees centigrade. The kind of equipment that many countries have, including Malawi, it's not that ultra cold chain kind of equipment.
But the government is remaining optimistic. It points out that one of the vaccine candidates, which has been 70% effective, only needs to be stored at a temperature of around 5 degrees Celsius.
Malawi is one of those countries on the continent that does well in this immunization program. So we have infrastructure in place already in all the regions. We have warehouses that can keep this vaccine.
Another problem for Malawi and many other African nations will be the cost of the vaccines. Earlier this year, the World Health Organization and other groups set up the COVAX initiative. Its aim is to ensure lower-income countries get equitable access to vaccines. The objective is noble, but analysts say it will not be able to stop wealthier countries from engaging in bilateral deals with the companies making vaccines.
Well, after decades of civil war, Central African Republic's film industry is understandably small. But many still have a huge desire to tell visual stories. A new generation of filmmakers in the country is learning the trade in specially adapted and funded courses from the Atelier Varin. Our team has more.
Behind the camera,
Action.
23-year-old Rafiki Farella, a young director who films students' daily routines on this campus in Bangui weekly.
On doit vraiment voir l'émotion. Quelle émotion est-ce que dégage le personnage principal pendant que son ami est en train de partir, il est en train de quitter la chambre.
The emotions of disillusioned youths with an uncertain future in a country still devastated by a civil war. Rafiki tries to tell their stories in a docu-fiction.
Beaucoup font des études, ils arrivent à avoir la licence, mais le diplôme de la licence ne sert presque à rien. Il y a certains qui sont devenus des pousseurs et d'autres qui ne font presque, ils sont des chômeurs.
Rafiki got financial support from the National Center for French Cinema to shoot this film. The project doesn't yet earn him enough to get by, so he juggles between his passion, the seven art of filmmaking, and a teaching job in this college in Bangui.
J'adore les jeunes parce qu'ils sont très cool avec moi, mais ce que j'aime beaucoup plus faire, c'est le cinéma. Alors je rêve qu'un jour, je vais vivre de mon cinéma.
After school in the evening, the young director has an appointment with his producer, Boris Loikin. Boris is the director of Camille, a film about the photojournalist Camille Lepage, who died in the Central African Republic during the Civil War. Today, the director is visiting Bangui. Since 2017, he has been training a new generation of Central African filmmakers.
C'est vrai qu'avec une petite caméra et un bon ordinateur et un peu de matériel son, on peut faire un film documentaire de très grande qualité qui va voyager dans le monde entier. Moi, je suis prêt à parier pour un film centrafricain à Cannes d'ici 2-3 ans.
Big hopes for the country's cinema as they plan 2 festivals related to the 7th art this year, a rare chance for people living in Bangui to watch films on the big screen in a country that still lacks cinemas.
That's it for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us, and do so again if you can. Take care.